What makes a motorcycle legendary? Is it speed, style, or something deeper? Something that makes people stop and stare, not because it's beautiful, but because it's so wonderfully wrong. These 10 motorcycles moved the entire concept of what a motorcycle could be. Machines that represent what happens when human creativity meets mechanical possibility. Some motorcycles fade into history, others change it completely. Drop a comment below. Which of these bikes would you actually dare to ride? Now buckle up, or should I say helmet up, because we're about to take a ride through most wonderfully weird creations. Starting our countdown at number 10, we have the Mola, a German motorcycle that took the phrase, reinventing the wheel, quite literally. Built between 1921 and 1925, this machine didn't just challenge conventional motorcycle design, it completely ignored it. The Mola's defining feature was absolutely revolutionary, a 5-cylinder rotary engine built directly into the front wheel. Not mounted near the wheel, not connected to the wheel, but actually integrated into the wheel itself. The entire front wheel was essentially a giant spinning engine producing around 14 horsepower. This wasn't some backyard project either. The Mola was designed by Fritz Kocherl, a German engineer who looked at the complexity of early motorcycle drivetrains and decided there had to be a simpler way. His solution was elegantly insane. Eliminate the middleman entirely. The 5 cylinders were arranged radially around the wheel's hub, with the entire assembly rotating as one unit. There was no transmission because there didn't need to be one. No chain drive, no belt, no complex gear ratios, just a throttle that controlled fuel flow to the cylinders spinning inches from the rider's feet. Riding a Mola was unlike anything else on the road. The gyroscopic effect from that massive rotating engine created incredible stability at speed. But made slow-speed maneuvering nearly impossible. Parking lots became battlegrounds, and tight corners required planning that would make a ship captain proud. The bike could reach speeds of around 60 miles per hour, genuinely impressive for the early 1920s. Production numbers remain debated among motorcycle historians. Some sources claim around 2,000 units were built, while others suggest closer to 1,500. The company folded in 1925, partly due to Germany's economic struggles, but also because the design was ultimately too unconventional for mass acceptance. Today, surviving Molas are among the most sought-after motorcycles in the world, representing a fascinating what-if moment in motorcycle history. Coming in at number 9, the Dodge Tomahawk. What do you get when you strap a Dodge Viper 510 to 4 wheels? The answer was 500 horsepower of pure, unadulterated insanity on 4 wheels. Unveiled as a concept in 2003 at the North American International Auto Show, with a limited run of non-functional display units produced afterward, the Tomahawk wasn't technically a motorcycle at all. It was something entirely new. Dodge took the 8.3-liter V10 engine from their Viper supercar and mounted it on a frame with 4 wheels arranged in closely spaced pairs, front and rear. The specifications were absolutely staggering. Powered by an 8.3-liter V10 Viper engine, rated at 500 horsepower and 525 pound-feet of torque. A speculative top speed of 300 to 400 miles per hour was claimed by Dodge. Though this figure was never verified and widely considered physically unfeasible due to tire limitations, aerodynamics, and rider safety, the design was pure aggression made manifest. The massive Viper engine dominated the center of the machine, with 4 wheels arranged in closely spaced pairs, designed to tilt together to simulate motorcycle-like lean, though the effectiveness of this system was never tested at high speeds. The rider sat in a forward-leaning position, gripping handlebars that controlled a steering system unlike anything seen before or since. 9 or 10 display units were built and sold by Dodge's custom division, not intended for street use or performance riding, with each carrying a price tag of around $550,000. But here's where the story gets interesting. These were not street legal, and were sold under the condition that they would not be registered or ridden on public roads. Some automotive journalists argued that the whole project was essentially an elaborate marketing stunt, a way for Dodge to showcase their Viper engine while generating massive publicity Others saw it as a genuine attempt to push the boundaries of what personal transportation could be. The Tomahawk's legacy is complicated. It proved that extreme engineering was possible, but it also highlighted the practical limitations of pursuing power above all else. Today, the surviving units are museum pieces, monuments to an era when American automotive companies were willing to build absolutely anything, regardless of whether it made sense. At number 8, the MTT Turbine Superbike Y2K, a machine that answered the question, what happens when you strap a helicopter engine to two wheels? The result was 320 horsepower of jet-powered madness that redefined what a motorcycle could be. Built by Marine Turbine Technologies starting in 2000, the Y2K wasn't just unusual, it was borderline insane. At its heart sat a Rolls-Royce Allison 250 C18 turboshaft engine, a model widely used in light civilian and military helicopters, including variants of the Bell 206. This wasn't some modified car engine or exotic racing mill. This was aerospace technology on two wheels. The specifications were absolutely mind-bending, rated at up to 320 horsepower and around 425 pound-feet of torque, with power delivery that was smoother and more linear than typical piston engines due to the nature of turbine operation. But the real party trick was the sound, a high-pitched whine that could be heard from miles away, rising to a shriek that made traditional motorcycles sound like whispers. The engineering challenges were extraordinary. Jet engines operate at temperatures that would melt conventional motorcycle components, so MTT had to develop entirely new cooling systems and heat-resistant materials. Exhaust temperatures reportedly exceeded 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit at the turbine outlet, which required strict safety precautions due to the intense heat behind the bike. Starting the Y2K required a turbine spool-up sequence, including electric starter engagement, fuel introduction, and stabilization at idle RPM. There was no traditional idle. The engine either ran at minimum operating speed or it didn't run at all. MTT claimed a top speed of over 200 miles per hour, though verified high-speed runs were rare and typically occurred under controlled conditions. The power delivery was unlike anything in the motorcycle world, smooth, linear, and utterly relentless once the turbine reached its operating range. Fewer than a dozen Y2Ks were built between 2000 and the mid-2000s, making them one of the rarest street-legal turbine-powered motorcycles ever produced, with each carrying a price tag of around $150,000. The Y2K represented the ultimate expression of engineering excess, proof that if you could imagine it and had enough money, someone would build it. Today, the surviving Y2Ks are among the most exotic motorcycles in existence. Reminders of an era when the only limit to motorcycle design was human imagination and the laws of physics. Moving to number 7, the Nura Car, a machine that looked at traditional motorcycle design and decided to throw everything out the window. Built between 1921 and 1927, this American-British creation wasn't trying to be a better motorcycle, it was trying to be something entirely different. The Nura Car's name wasn't just marketing cleverness. It was a literal description of the designer's philosophy. Carl Neraker wanted to create a vehicle that was near a car in comfort and safety, while still technically being a motorcycle. The result was one of the most unconventional two-wheelers ever mass-produced. The most striking feature was the riding position. Instead of straddling the machine like a traditional motorcycle, riders sat in a low, feet-forward position that resembled driving a car more than riding a bike. The handlebars were positioned for a relaxed, upright posture, and the entire seating arrangement prioritized comfort over sportiness. But the real innovation was the steering system. The Nura Car abandoned traditional motorcycle forks entirely, instead using hub-center steering where the front wheel pivoted around a central hub. This eliminated the rake and trail geometry that defined motorcycle handling, creating something that steered more like a car than a traditional bike. The frame was equally unconventional. Instead of the typical motorcycle's exposed engine and minimal bodywork, the Nura Car featured extensive panels that enclosed most of the mechanical components. The rider sat inside a partial fairing that provided weather protection, a feature that wouldn't become common on motorcycles for another 50 years. Power came from a modest single-cylinder engine, producing around 10 horsepower, later upgraded to a two-cylinder unit. Performance was never the point. The Nura Car was designed for practical transportation, not thrills. Top speed was around 40 miles per hour, adequate for the road conditions of the 1920s. Production was split between the United States and Britain, with slight variations between the two versions. Total production reached approximately 16,000 units, making it one of the most successful unconventional motorcycles ever built. The Nura Car's legacy is fascinating. It proved that alternative approaches to motorcycle design could find commercial success, even if they challenged fundamental assumptions about what a motorcycle should be. Today, its influence can be seen in modern scooters and some touring motorcycles that prioritize comfort over traditional motorcycle dynamics. At number 6, the Bulmerland, a Czechoslovakian motorcycle that answered the question, "How long is too long?" with a resounding, "There's no such thing." Built from 1924 until World War II, this machine stretched the very definition of what a motorcycle could be. The Bulmerland wasn't just unusual, it was physically impossible to ignore. The most distinctive models featured wheelbases that stretched over 10 feet, making them longer than some small cars. The bike resembled a motorcycle that had been put on a medieval torture rack and stretched until it reached absurd proportions. This wasn't accidental design, it was intentional engineering by Albin Liebisch, who believed that longer wheelbases would create superior stability and comfort. His solution was to simply make the motorcycle as long as necessary to achieve his vision, regardless of how bizarre it looked. The most famous variant was the three-seater, which featured a standard motorcycle seat up front, followed by two passenger seats arranged in tandem behind the rider. The extended frame created a limousine-like experience, where passengers could sit comfortably without the cramped conditions of traditional motorcycle passenger accommodations. Power came from a single-cylinder engine producing around 16 horsepower, which was adequate for the bike's intended purpose as a touring machine rather than a speed demon. The long wheelbase did indeed provide remarkable stability at highway speeds, though parking and low-speed maneuvering became exercises in advanced geometry. The Bulmerland's construction was surprisingly sophisticated for its era. The frame was meticulously engineered to handle the stresses of the extended wheelbase, and the suspension system was designed to maintain comfort across all three seating positions. Quality was high, with attention to detail that rivaled more conventional motorcycles. Production remained limited throughout its run, with most estimates suggesting fewer than 1,000 units were built across all variants. Today, surviving Bulmerlands are among the most distinctive motorcycles in existence, proof that sometimes the most memorable machines are the ones that refuse to follow conventional wisdom about proportion and practicality. Coming in at number 5, the Quazar, a British motorcycle that asked, "What if motorcycles had roofs?" Built during the 1980s, this machine looked like someone had crossed a motorcycle with a fighter jet cockpit and decided the result was street legal. The Quazar was the brainchild of Malcolm Newell and Ken Lehman, two British engineers who believed motorcycles could be both practical and exciting. Their solution was radical: enclose the entire rider in an aerodynamic shell that provided complete weather protection while maintaining motorcycle dynamics. The design resembled nothing so much as a land-based aircraft. The rider sat in a reclined position inside a fully enclosed cabin with gull-wing doors that opened upward. The front featured a large windscreen, while the sides had smaller windows that provided visibility while maintaining structural integrity. Entry and exit required a unique ritual. The gull-wing doors opened to reveal a cockpit-like interior where the rider reclined in a bucket seat with feet-forward controls. Starting the bike involved closing the canopy and essentially becoming a pilot rather than a traditional motorcyclist. The aerodynamic advantages were significant. The enclosed body reduced drag dramatically, allowing the relatively modest engine to achieve impressive fuel economy and higher top speeds than conventional motorcycles with similar power outputs. Wind noise was virtually eliminated, and weather protection was absolute. But the Quazar's radical design also created unique challenges. Ventilation in warm weather became problematic, and the enclosed cabin could become uncomfortably hot during summer riding. The unusual entry and exit procedure meant that quick stops became complicated affairs. Production remained extremely limited, with fewer than 20 units believed to have been built. The high cost and unconventional design limited its appeal to a tiny niche of riders willing to embrace its aircraft-inspired approach to motorcycle transportation. At number 4. The Lazareth LM847, a French creation that literally transforms before your eyes. Built by Ludovic Lazareth in the 2010s, this machine didn't just challenge motorcycle conventions, it rewrote the laws of physics. The LM847's party trick was straight out of science fiction. At the push of a button, the bike transformed from a four-wheeled vehicle into a traditional two-wheeler. The front and rear wheel pairs would retract, lifting the outer wheels off the ground and creating a conventional motorcycle stance. Power came from a 4.7-liter Maserati V8 engine, producing around 470 horsepower. This wasn't some modest commuter machine. It was a rolling testament to what happens when automotive excess meets motorcycle engineering. The transformation system was a marvel of mechanical complexity. Hydraulic actuators controlled the wheel retraction mechanism, while the suspension system adapted to maintain proper geometry in both four-wheel and two-wheel modes. The engineering required to make this work was extraordinary. In four-wheel mode, the LM847 provided stability and traction that allowed riders to explore the full potential of that massive Maserati engine. In two-wheel mode, it became a traditional motorcycle with performance that bordered on the terrifying. Only a handful were ever built, with each carrying a price tag exceeding 100,000 euros. The complexity of the transformation system meant that maintenance and reliability were constant concerns for the few brave souls who actually purchased one. The LM847 represented the ultimate expression of modern engineering excess. Proof that in the 21st century, if you could imagine it, someone with enough skill and determination could actually build it. Moving to number 3. The Big Toe. A machine that took the concept of bigger is better to its absolute extreme. Built by Tom Weiberg in 1998, this towering creation didn't just break records, it broke necks as people strained to look up at it. The Big Toe stands as the tallest rideable motorcycle ever built, reaching a staggering 14 feet and 3 inches in height. To put that in perspective, it's taller than most single-story buildings and required a ladder for the rider to actually mount the machine. Power came from a Jaguar V12 engine, producing around 300 horsepower, which was necessary to move the massive structure and its equally massive rider perched high above the ground. The engine choice wasn't arbitrary. The V12's smooth power delivery was essential for controlling such an unwieldy machine. The engineering challenges were immense. The extended frame had to be reinforced to handle the stresses of its extreme height, while the suspension system required complete redesign to maintain any semblance of control. The center of gravity was so high that even gentle turns became exercises in advanced physics. Riding the Big Toe was less about transportation and more about performance art. The rider sat roughly at the height of a second-story window, providing a unique perspective on the world below. However, practical concerns like wind resistance, stability, and the sheer terror of being that high off the ground limited its appeal. The machine earned its place in the Guinness Book of World Records and became a touring attraction, proving that sometimes the most memorable engineering achievements are the ones that push boundaries simply because they can, not because they should. At number 2, the Paraves Monotracer, a Swiss machine that solved the age-old problem of motorcycle weather protection with typical Swiss precision. Built by Paraves starting in the 1980s, this enclosed two-wheeler looked like a fighter jet that had been grounded and given wheels. The Monotracer represented a completely different approach to enclosed motorcycles. Instead of sacrificing dynamics for comfort, the Swiss engineers created a machine that could lean into corners like a traditional motorcycle while providing complete weather protection and luxury car-like amenities. The design featured a sleek, aerodynamic body that completely enclosed both rider and passenger in a climate-controlled cabin. The cockpit included automotive-style seating, a full dashboard, and even air conditioning, luxuries that traditional motorcycles could never offer. The engineering breakthrough was the tilting mechanism. The monotracer could lean up to 52 degrees in corners, maintaining motorcycle-like handling characteristics while keeping occupants dry and comfortable. The suspension system was sophisticated enough to handle both the leaning dynamics and the enclosed cabin's weight distribution. Performance was impressive, with various engine options ranging from BMW motorcycle units to more powerful automotive engines. The aerodynamic efficiency meant that even modest power plants could achieve remarkable fuel economy and respectable top speeds. However, the monotracer's complexity came with a price. Each unit cost significantly more than comparable motorcycles, and the intricate tilting mechanism required specialized maintenance. The learning curve for riders accustomed to traditional motorcycles was also substantial. Production remained limited throughout its run, appealing primarily to wealthy enthusiasts who valued the unique combination of motorcycle dynamics and automotive comfort. Today, the monotracer represents the pinnacle of enclosed motorcycle engineering, proof that with enough ingenuity, you really can have the best of both worlds. And finally, at number 1, the box. Created by various inventors over the years, with the most famous version developed in the early 2000s, this contraption answered a question nobody knew they were asking. What if your luggage could take you places? The box represented the ultimate in motorcycle portability. When folded, it resembled an oversized suitcase that could theoretically be carried onto airplanes, stored in closets, or transported in car trunks. The transformation from luggage to motorcycle was a mechanical origami display that never failed to draw crowds. The folding mechanism was surprisingly sophisticated. The frame consisted of multiple hinged sections that collapsed in a specific sequence, with the wheels retracting into the body and the handlebars folding down to minimize the overall footprint. The entire process took several minutes and required following a precise sequence to avoid damaging the delicate mechanisms. Power came from a small electric motor, typically producing just enough output to propel a single rider at modest speeds. The battery pack was integrated into the frame structure, and the limited range meant the box was suitable only for short urban trips or novelty demonstrations. The riding experience was unlike anything else on the road. The small wheels and compact geometry created a nervous, twitchy handling characteristic that required constant attention. The low power output meant that even gentle hills could become insurmountable obstacles. Despite its limitations, the box captured imaginations worldwide. It appeared in movies, trade shows, and technology demonstrations as proof that transportation could be reimagined in radical ways. The concept spawned numerous variations and inspired a generation of inventors to think beyond conventional vehicle design. Production remained extremely limited across all versions, with most units serving as prototypes or demonstration vehicles rather than practical transportation. The high cost, limited performance, and complex folding mechanism meant that the box remained more of a fascinating curiosity than a viable product. Today, the box represents the ultimate expression of "because we can" engineering. A reminder that sometimes the most memorable innovations are the ones that challenge our fundamental assumptions about what vehicles should look like and how they should function. So there you have it. 10 motorcycles that prove sometimes the best ideas are the ones that sound completely insane. What's the weirdest vehicle you've ever seen? Let me know in the comments.